Hello YouTube, what is up? Commando here with a video. Obviously, as you can see, we're on my Kemandime channel. Now here we are talking about getting into anime figures. Okay, this isn't about buying them. You don't have any figures, you've never bought any figures, you've never even considered buying any figures. You're just thinking about getting into the hobby. This is going to be where you begin. So, first and foremost, before anything, this is going to be your number one resource. MFC. MYFIGURECOLLECTION.net. Go right now, make an account, you'll be glad you did. Amazing anime figure resource, or resource for any figure made by a Japanese company, or of any figure of a Japanese character. You can track and keep up to date with all upcoming figures. You can see a catalog and release list of every figure that's ever released. Basically, it's just a website resource for every anime figure ever existed or that will exist. You can find figures for any character that you want. You just type in the name, Rem, ReZero, boom. Every Rem figure that's ever been created. There's a lot of them. And you can go through and find the ones you want. Some are upcoming, some are out already. So, yeah. You can catalog your entire collection on there and keep track of all the figures you own, how much you paid, all that wonderful information. You can make that private, or you can make it public, and other people can see your beautiful collection. And it lets you keep track of figures that you've ordered and figures that you already own. MFC's got a great community that you can be a part of. You can join discussions, you can make comments on figure pages. All figures can be rated and ranked, so you can check out the quality of figures based on the user ratings and rate them yourself for figures that you own. You can discuss just anime and anime related topics in the articles. You can make posts, ask questions, make friends. Great resource for anything anime figure related, and the community around anime figure collecting. This is just a community of people who love the waifu titties just as much as you do, and all their likes and dislikes are going to be listed on their page. You can see other people's collections, compare your collections, sell your figures, buy figures. It's amazing. Go make an MFC account. I'm going to kind of cite that resource many times throughout this and all my videos for the most part, so just get in on that. MFC, fantastic anime figure resource for beginners and seasoned veterans of PVC titties. Alright, now that you've made an MFC account and you're ready to get into the figure collecting world, you're going to have to set some parameters, some boundaries for yourself to both limit your size of your collection and the price of your collection. You know, it's easy to just start out and be like, I'm just going to buy every figure that I see that I really like. Soon enough, you spend $10,000 on figures, your shelves and walls are filled, your girlfriend's leaving you, your mom's disowning you, and you're being kicked out. The only thing you have left to live in is the AmiAmi box that your life has become. So, before we get to that point, zoom out, take a step back, limit yourself. What are you going to be collecting? This is the question you want to ask. Now, first, we're going to limit ourselves to a type of figure in the beginning. You can diversify if you like, but when starting out, it's easy to pick one and kind of stick with it for a while. You know, the most popular figures are scaled figures. These are figures that vary between 1/8, 1/9, and bigger. The smaller the number, the bigger the scale. So 1/4 is obviously a quarter. It's going to be bigger than a 1/9. Ultimately more expensive. But this is just kind of what people think of when they think of anime figures. Typical scaled figures from decent companies with a really nice sculpt, really nice paint, nice poses, cool characters, PVC goodness, anime figure glory. That's kind of the pinnacle of the hobby. Moving on from that, you've kind of gotten prize figures. These are a much better beginner figure. They're much like the scaled PVC figures, but they're typically a little smaller, a little bit lower quality, but significantly cheaper, like fractions cheaper. So you're looking at over 100, 150, 200 bucks for a nice good scaled figure, like 1/8, 1/7. Prize figures come in a little smaller, typically 1/9 to 1/8. It can happen, or 1/7 even. I've had decently sized prize figures. Decent sized prize. They're really cheap. These are actually figures that typically are made to be put into crane games in Japan. So think about where you live and the crane games you have, and now know that Japan is better because they have waifu prizes. But you can buy these figures at your normal anime figure buying retailers online, just like all the other ones, at a significantly reduced price. Instead of paying, 8,000 plus yen for a nice scaled figure, you're paying 1,500 to 3,000 yen, which is like less than 40 bucks typically for a nice little prize figure that you can start your collection off with. They have a bunch of different characters from a bunch of different series in a bunch of different poses. Rem especially is very popular in the prize figure universe. Companies like Sega, Taito, and even GSC, though they're not typically prize figures, has a smaller, cheaper figure line called their Pop-Up Parade, which are great for beginners. They also have action figures. So if you want to collect articulated, posable figures and characters, you're going to kind of be looking more into like the Figma line or the SH Figuarts, or there's some bigger ones. There's a lot. But essentially you're looking at articulated figures. These are different from scaled statues. They're movable. The parts typically can come off and interchange. Figmas, I know, all Figmas. Figmas are about this big. All Figma parts can be interchanged with each other, so you can swap the hands out, you can swap the heads off, the face plates of the characters can be interchanged between every Figma, because they're all made to specific standards, and they're made to do that. Moving on, we've got Nendoroids, which are another type of articulated figure, but I'd kind of put them between articulated and scaled figures. They're really small, their heads are really big, their eyes are really big, their bodies are super tiny, and they're articulated. But they have pretty limited articulation because of the size of the limbs. So the arms move with the shoulder axis, just kind of like whoo, 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 whoo. Whereas Figmas could do this. Nendoroids can't do that. Nor should they. God. And Nendoroids are a lot more chibi in style, you know, the big head, small body. Very cutesy. Again, all the parts interchangeable. You can swap faces, hands, bodies. They make different accessories like guns and attachments and weapons that can work between all of them as well. Next up, you've got model kits. These are somewhere in between action figures and a hobby of their own. Model kits are typically, if you might have heard of them, you might be familiar, think of like a Gundam. You know, it's like a build kit. You get these plastic sheets with pieces that you pop out, and then you build the characters yourself. These characters are typically articulated. There might be glue involved depending on the level of sophistication of the articulation of the model kit that you purchase. So yeah, you can get beginner model kits that require no glue or other accessories, and then you can get expert level model kits that require you to paint them, glue them together, sand them, all sorts of fun stuff if you get deeper into that hobby. But that's the type of figure that you can collect if you so desire. And finally, I don't collect these personally. I have no experience with them other than what I've seen online, but dolls. Now, dolls are great to know about because A, you can use them as an argument when people call your anime figures dolls, and B, you probably won't be able to afford them anyway. These are like top-level, high-end figures that only the experts should be collecting. Very high quality. I'm talking like Dolphy Dreams. Like a doll, you're thinking, my baby cousin has dolls. No, they don't have these dolls, all right? This is Saber. She's got real hair, real fabric, a sword that will cut you in half, you know? Quarter scale, absolutely gigantic, couple $1,000, over $1,000 to be sure. Dolls ain't no joke, ain't no lie, baby, bye bye bye. I apologize for whatever that was. But dolls are not a great place to start, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you've got deep pockets. But they might be something to strive towards, and maybe you'll feel comfortable after a few years enough to add one to your collection, because they're very nice. Don't get me wrong, they are phenomenal, but the price matches that quality. Alright, so now we've determined the types of figures you can collect. What kind of figures are you going to collect? Are you going to collect a specific character? You know, maybe you just want Rem figures, and it doesn't matter how that works. So you want Rem in any capacity. You want articulated Rem, you want scaled Rem, you want prize Rem, you want doll Rem, you want model kit Rem. Doesn't matter, you just want Rem. That's a pretty decent way to diversify your collection and limit it at the same time. So you can kind of diversify the types of figures you're getting, but limit it to a specific style, which is Rem. Just Rem. Or maybe you want to limit your collection to a specific series. That's another way. So maybe you want just ReZero figures. You get Rem, Amelia, Ram, Subaru, Felix, all sorts of different characters, and you can still limit your collection in that capacity. And then, you know, maybe you've collected every figure from ReZero and now you want to get all the Gurren Lagann figures, or whatever. It's just a good way to kind of set your focus for at least a time and keep things, you know, running smoothly for you so you don't get overwhelmed and, you know, kicked out of your house. Or maybe there's a specific line of figure that you want. So say you want to collect multiple characters for multiple series, but you want them to all be bunny girls. Well, guess what? Freeing has you covered. They have a bunny girl line of 1/4 scale figures, fairly expensive, but they're all in the same style or in the same Playboy bunny sexy outfit. You can get them with the fishnet stockings or without. Some of them have cast-off options, most of them do not, but you can get different characters and have them all aesthetically fit the same theme. Yoko from Gurren Lagann, bunny girl. Supersonico, bunny girl. Rem, bunny girl. Lala from To Love Ru, bunny girl. So that's one way to limit your collection as well, to a specific line or series of figures from a company, or series of companies work in tandem to keep things aesthetically similar. It's just a way to make your collection aesthetically pleasing, but also to limit your budget and kind of focus to keep things in check. Because as somebody with over 200 figures, it gets out of hand very quickly. Don't be me. Start with a focus in mind in the beginning. Start with a guide, a bubble that you're going to stay within. I focus on my collection. I want to collect a variety of things. I don't just collect scale figures, but I focus primarily on them. But I do have some Nendoroids and Figmas for some of my favorite characters, and 1 or 2 model kits that I want to build in my spare time because A, it aesthetically fits the theme of the character. They're Metabots, so having little machines that I put together as Metabots, it kind of makes sense, and I think they look pretty cool and they're articulated. I limit myself to my favorite characters from my favorite series or original characters based off of illustrations from the likes of Native, Binding, Rocket Boy, all those companies that make just the super sexy half-naked to naked figures that I want to have naked in my room. Naked. But starting off, I implore you, start small. Get some prize figures or some of those pop-up trade figures that I mentioned from Good Smile Company. Great jumping off point for beginner/wannabe collectors, and they're not too much of an investment or a time sink, especially if you go for ones that are already out. Yeah, Sega, Tato, Furyu, at least start with 1 or 2 prize figures. That's not what I did, but my first figure was also a bootleg, so don't be me. Alright, so you've determined all these things and you know where you're going to focus your collection, and you've looked for figures that you want, for characters you want on MFC. So start off with figures that are already out. A good place to start for beginners is released and aftermarket figures. These are going to be things that are available for order and shipment right now on places like AmiAmi or HLJ. I made a figure buying guide if you have no idea how to buy figures at all in a completely separate video, so go check it out. But the aftermarket, places like Mandarake, AmiAmi Pre-Owned are going to be pre-owned figures that are already released. Sometimes you can get them a bit cheaper, sometimes they're more expensive. It depends on the figure, bunch of different factors. But ideally, you're going to be buying figures that are already out, so you don't need to worry about pre-ordering or tracking progress for new figures. That's all going to be stuff you're going to learn over time, and you're going to get more adept at the more you get into collecting. But first and foremost, beginners, it's really good to just order figures that are already out, buy figures that are already out, so you can get them in your hand right away, see them, admire them, and really see if this is what you want to make your life. And there's a lot of really good high-quality figures that have come out over the last 15 to 20 years. Huge market. A lot of people are selling older figures to get new figures, and it's a great opportunity right for you to jump in and get into the hobby while they're getting out of it. Just make sure the figures are in good condition. Different places have different qualities on these, and make sure the figure is good quality by checking the MFC reviews for that specific figure, for the character you're looking for. Now, this is going to have to be its own separate video entirely, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit here. Bootlegs. You don't want bootlegs. They are absolute trash. They're not worth the plastic they're made out of. They hurt the industry. They hurt you. They're toxic. They smell bad. They're ugly. Don't buy bootlegs, all right? You're going to find eBay, Amazon. These are places to avoid for buying figures. You might be able to find some on eBay. I went into all this in my how to buy figures video. Just know that bootlegs for figures do exist, and you want to avoid them. They're going to be listed really cheap, and trust me, they're trash. If you want to know if a figure that you want has a bootleg, MFC has a pretty good job of keeping track of that. On the listing page, it'll kind of say in red text, this item has a bootleg available. And then you click that, and it'll show you pictures typically of the bootleg that other people have gotten, so that you don't have to, so you don't get burned. Typically the box is going to be a little different, the paint job's going to be hideous, there's going to be flash on the sculpt, plastic hanging off of it. The figure's just going to look off, kind of discount version of itself. Sometimes bootlegs can look pretty good. That's besides the point. Avoid them entirely. They're trash. and just keep an eye on that, and just know that they exist. And you're not going to find them on places like Mandarake and AmiAmi, because they do a very good job at weeding that stuff out of the pre-owned items they sell. And they will never sell any bootlegs as pre-order items. I've been using them for AmiAmi specifically for 10 years. So they're reputable, and they're awesome. So now that we got all that out of the way, before you order anything just yet, display. Where are you going to display your figures? How are you going to display your figures? Are you going to display them? Do you have a bookshelf? Do you have a glass cabinet like that behind me? IKEA. 4 shelves. Bottom shelves is a hell that no figure is seen at, but that's all right. It keeps them dust-free. You want to put them in a nice environment, smoke-free environment, out of the direct sunlight, to keep them as good as possible for as long as possible. These are things that you want to own many, many years down the line, or even as a potential investment. I would ultimately recommend displaying your figures out of the box. I know some people like to display them in the boxes or keep them in boxes for fear of their price going down in resale value. I have about 10 years of anime figure experience. I've bought, I've sold, I've done all sorts of things with new and used figures, and I'm going to tell you right away, a majority of the figure buying population, myself included, does not care if a figure has been opened before. It doesn't matter. It's not like other kinds of Western figures where the packaging gets completely ruined by being opened. Anime figures can be very easily put back into their original packaging after they've been opened due to the nature of the way the boxes are made, provided you had it displayed in a good quality setting, again, smoke-free, UV, safe, out of the direct sunlight, in a decent temperature. With all these factors into consideration, if a figure is in good quality after you put it back in the box, people will still be interested to buy it. You can still sell it rather easily. It's just about the character, the figure, whether or not people want it, and what they're willing to pay. But typically, aftermarket, previously displayed figures, their price doesn't go down significantly. As long as the quality's still good, they're going to be relatively easily to sell and rebuy. So, I have had no issue buying pre-owned figures. AmiAmi does a good job at listing the condition of the figures. Same with Mandarake. Display your figures, guys. Fear not, as long as you're displaying them in a good environment and taking care of them, dusting them, they're still going to be worth something someday, potentially, unless they get re-released or the figure is overproduced or many other factors. But I always tell people not to buy figures as an investment directly. Buy figures for characters you want, for figures you really like, and then if they happen to increase in value and you want to sell them later, fantastic, you've made some money and you've made somebody else happy. Because at the end of the day, a figure is worth what you're willing to pay for it. And keep your boxes, guys, please, for the love of God. I know it's hard, there's a lot of them, they take up a lot of space, but for the most part, you're not going to be able to resell your figure without a box. Not a lot of people, myself included, want to buy a loose figure. It can get damaged very easily. There's nowhere for you to store it or stow it away when you need to move. And moving, I've moved 4 or 5 times in the last few years, being an early 20-something, and it was really easy to just pop these bad boys out of the cabinet into the boxes that are sitting in the closet, put them in a shipping box delivered to a U-Haul down the city streets. Very easy. These things ship from Japan. They can make it through a U-Haul in their original boxes. No problem at all. I highly recommend everybody keep their boxes. I might even do a completely separate video on keeping your boxes because it's just such a good idea. For reselling, for moving, storing, my God, the possibilities are endless. Ow! All right, now finally, this is kind of more adept figure tip here in getting into collecting. You're going to have to know that eventually you're going to need to be patient. And I mean that in many ways. Anime figures, the way they work is upon their announcement, they get posted onto MFC from their inception, whether it be just an image of what the figure will look like or a completed sculpt of a gray unpainted figure that what it will look like eventually. These sculpts will either be made out of clay or in a 3D sculpting program like ZBrush. This is a concept. From concept to completion can take years, and on MFC you can track these figures through the years of their development up until their pre-order window and eventual release. So just know that once a character is announced, you might have a really long time before it actually comes out, so you've got to be patient. And then you want to determine whether or not you want to pre-order these figures. There's certain risks and benefits to pre-ordering figures. Obviously, the number one benefit is you are guaranteed to get that figure when it comes out. You pre-order a figure, you are basically guaranteed getting that character figure when it releases. So you see a figure that you want, it's available for pre-order, you hit the pre-order button, goes into your cart, it's on your orders, listed on your account, confirmed, you're getting that figure. Guaranteed. Problem? A potential risk? That figure might go down in the aftermarket. So that figure releases, depending on a number of factors, maybe it wasn't well received, maybe it was kind of horrible, maybe it was overproduced, any number of reasons, that figure is now less than you paid for it originally. But honestly, guys, it's still worth it to pre-order if it's a figure you want. Because at the end of the day, if you want to pay that much and you're comfortable paying that much, then you shouldn't worry about its price going down, because a figure, again, is worth whatever you're willing to pay for it. Now, if you're not comfortable paying that, and you want to risk it and take the chance that it might go down in the aftermarket, you can do that too. So if a figure is coming out and you are not comfortable pre-ordering and putting down the money that it is currently priced at, and you think it'll go down in the aftermarket once it releases, you can hold off. But know that the risk of that is that it might go up in the aftermarket, or it might completely sell out and be unavailable for a long time until other people decide to sell it later. These are things you got to think about, but these are more advanced figure collecting issues that you have to deal with. In the beginning, focus on buying figures that are already out, characters that are already released in the aftermarket or available currently on AmiAmi, HLJ, again, any number of shopping places. And finally, you can keep track of all the new announcements and listings on MFC for every figure that's coming out and every figure that's added to the site every day. And you can just look at them, keep an eye on them, check the figure pages every now and again, see the progress, and see if a figure is coming out soon. Eventually, patience is key. You're going to be pre-ordering figures years in advance. You're going to be following figures years in advance. Figures are going to be getting delayed that you've pre-ordered. Just expect to have to wait. That is part of the long game for anime figure collecting, is waiting. You are going to spend most of your time collecting anime figures waiting for those figures to even come out. So just be ready for that. And honestly, it gets easy and you get accustomed to it and you start to appreciate delays, because maybe you didn't have that extra $200 at the end of the month like you had planned, and now it's not coming up for 2 months and you got a little bit of extra time to save up. That is about everything, guys. That is kind of all the information you need to start beginning collecting. This is the beginner's guide to collecting. This has nothing to do with buying or ordering figures so much as my other video does, but this is just kind of about determining how you want to get into the hobby and what you're going to focus on, and some things you need to know about the hobby and collecting. So in final closing, double closing, just bullet points. Figure resource, MFC, make an account, all those wonderful things I mentioned earlier, fantastic resource. Do that. 2, set your collecting parameters and boundaries. Keep your collection contained to specific characters, series, lines, types of figures, etc. to kind of reel yourself in from just buying everything that exists and ruining your own life with PVC titties. Because it can happen and it'll be devastating. So keep your figure collecting in check, set some parameters for yourself, and stay within them. For the absolute beginner, start small. If you're still skeptical about the hobby or you're not sure you're going to be interested, start small, get some prize figures, some pop-up parade figures from Good Smile, maybe a Nendoroid or something like that. If you do really want a really high-end scaled figure that's, over $100, $150, I would still say collect some smaller prize figures first, but if those are okay, you start with one, again, figures that are already released, and then check it out, see how you like it, have it on display, get accustomed to dusting it, displaying it, get comfortable with having that, and then multiply that by however many figures you want to have in the future. I know that's just kind of a never-ending task. Buy figures that are already out, check the aftermarket, check for released figures, pre-owned figures on places like MFC, Mandarake, AmiAmi pre-owned. Fantastic. Try your best to avoid bootlegs and get knowledgeable about the figures that you do plan on buying, even if they are already released. Keep track of where these figures you're buying are coming from, what the prices are, and if there's bootlegs available for them, because these are all factors that can play into whether or not you're getting a bootleg. Determining where you're going to display your figures, how you're going to display your figures, making sure that they're going to be in a safe environment that keeps them well preserved over the years, and as low maintenance as possible. That's why I prefer cabinets. I only have a couple figures on the shelf because I really don't like dusting. I have to dust those once every few weeks. I dust the ones in the cabinet once every few months. And it gets dusty in this room. Keep the boxes, you guys. Keep track of how you're going to preserve these wonderful, lovely PVC goddesses. that you're going to find yourself ogling over the next few years. And then patience, of course. Keep track of upcoming figures, pre-ordering figures. Get accustomed to waiting and waiting and waiting. And you remember that Ryan Reynolds movie with Justin Long in it? Waiting. Get accustomed. And that's everything you need to know getting into figures for beginners. If you're looking on how to buy figures and this information has been helpful to you, check out my channel. I have a whole guide on how to buy, where to buy, how to do buying of figures, and all that fun stuff. But other than that, guys, I appreciate your view. Leave a like if you liked it. Leave a comment if you want to yell at me. And subscribe to my channel for all sorts of anime and figure videos.